Do Indiana Jones-style treasures really exist in the real world? The booby traps are mostly movie trope, but there are some enormous treasures out there. A sunken treasure ship was just found near South America with an estimated value of $2 billion worth of gold. In the Great Pyramid of Egypt, a large new space has been identified via remote sensing, but no one knows what's in there or how to access it. A group in Ethiopia says they themselves have the real Ark of the Covenant, but it's guarded by a lifetime caretaker who can never leave and who cannot let anyone else in. There. The Israeli Copper Scroll, created before the destruction in 70 AD, lists various places where enormous values of temple treasures were stored, and some of the locations have been partially identified. So it's an active treasure hunt. So lots of adventure is still out there. There's possibly a train buried in Poland with the Romanovs' amber room in it. There are undiscovered treasure shipwrecks in the water. There are like 6 missing American nukes. Beyond that, probably not much. Very doubtful. It kind of breaks down when you think of it. Booby traps still working even though the temple or whatnot has been abandoned for centuries. Mostly no. But not entirely no. Ancient ruins tend to be, well, ruined. They deteriorate pretty fast, often collapsing or getting filled in with dirt or mud. Finding ancient structures that are intact and have open chambers inside where artifacts could be preserved is unusual, and most of those have already been located and opened by archaeologists. Traps in ancient structures are virtually unheard of. There's one uncorroborated mention from ancient times of traps being set in a tomb, and a handful of structures that have elements that might be traps, but probably aren't. In any case, like the structures themselves, most traps would deteriorate and become non-functional after long spans of time. The complicated, highly engineered examples seen in Indiana Jones movies were probably never built, and if built, would have stopped working after at most a few decades. As for treasure, a lot of it was stolen. It's hard to build an elaborate tomb or dungeon and stash treasure in it without somebody finding out and going in to retrieve the treasure. As a result, many tombs and dungeons that did have treasure were robbed shortly after being completed. It's rare to find an ancient structure built to house treasure of significant value that actually still has the treasure in it, but it does happen once in a while. One caveat though is shipwrecks. During the exploration age, plenty of ships carrying precious metals sank in various locations in the ocean, taking the cargo down with them. Some have been located and salvaged. Some have been located but largely unsalvaged because the diving operations necessary to salvage stuff are difficult, expensive, and dangerous. Plenty have not been located, especially in deep water in the open ocean. So there are definitely a handful of shipwrecks scattered around the ocean floor where you could find millions of dollars worth of gold, silver, gems, etc. if you manage to get down there and sift through whatever mud has settled on top of them in the meantime. These aren't trapped, though, as the original idea was for them to complete their voyages and unload the cargo normally. But diving to salvage a shipwreck is usually dangerous enough without any deliberate traps. There are also some shipwrecks from more recent times that went down carrying large amounts of explosives, which could still be dangerous. But for the most part the shipwrecks with treasure in them and the shipwrecks with explosives in them are not the same ones. None of the booby traps seen in those movies would still be functional without someone to maintain them, and they're also needlessly convoluted. There are tons of undiscovered historical sites filled with treasure. Some of it priceless historical artifacts. Some of it gold or silver or whatever. None of them are booby-trapped though. Edit. Yes, there might be a river of mercury over a Chinese tomb. That's a fun story, but that's really not an Indiana Jones style trap. I always wondered, playing games like Skyrim and such, when you go into a dungeon that's lain untouched for hundreds of years, who exactly has been keeping the torches alight in their sconces and oiling all the booby traps? Like, we're the first people to set foot in here since the ancient times. Except for Dave, who's been keeping it all tidy. There are undiscovered sites with a bunch of artifacts or loot in them. But centuries-old still functional booby traps are just a movie trope. I don't think all the pyramids on Earth have been fully investigated. I'd say a solid maybe. Kinda not really. I know the Egyptians used to set up fake entrances, curses, and so forth in their pyramids. Probably about as close as you're going to get. I'm sure you could find some ancient ruins with valuable artifacts in them. And some cultures did come up with the idea of safeguarding graves. The problem is that generally speaking they understood engineering far less than we do in the 21st century. And it's really hard to make a trap that will last for centuries. Plus someone will probably have pilfered it in that time frame, so it would have to be reusable as well. Me playing re-games. Who TF makes these kind of places? For you to open a door, you have to circle the whole building. Combine two detachable items. Insert it into something. Be rewarded by one new thing. But the key is inside it. But when you get the container, a door will open, releasing a monster. Like what? Depends on your definition of treasure and time frame. I mean, the Antikythera mechanism was discovered in around 1900. It was so lost that even the knowledge that the Greeks could make complex gearing had disappeared. One thing that always bothers me in Raiders, and it's been a few years, forgive me if I am misremembering, but in the idol chamber there is sunlight streaming in, so there is a way to get into that room, and consequently out of it directly without jumping the pit, avoiding the spiked trap or being chased by a boulder. X never, ever, marks the spot. No, it's a movie. The archaeologist in me wants to write paragraphs about this. But I won't. I'll spare everyone. One of the coolest classes I took was Frauds, Myths and Mysteries. Essentially an occult class that is scientific and also talks about Indiana Jones, Tomb Raider, etc., and their legitimacy. Long story short, kind of, traps weren't really a thing. Highly complex from an engineering standpoint. Curses were 20x more effective against ancient peoples and were often enough to scare them off of robbing. Traps were occasionally a thing, but nothing like in video games or movies. They would be insanely basic and honestly easy to people to spot. But yes, there really is a lot of treasure left about in our world. But it's not easy to find, nor safe to attempt to find honestly. There's this island in the North Atlantic near Nova Scotia. If they do, they belong in a museum. In the whole world? Probably. We only know what we know. There's a lot out there we don't. Yes, but I will not be telling you guys where. Just gotta figure out how to beat the laser beams and I'll be a billionaire. Then I'll buy Reddit and make a breadcrumb trail to another secret treasure. But what? The treasure is empty. Only a note inside that says where another treasure is. It's on the ocean bed. Get scuba gear. Practice to withstand great pressure. Get down there and there's another note. It's actually at the other spot you just at, but in an obvious place which you wouldn't even check. Go back. Get that money. Get killed on your way out by bees you didn't know you had an allergy to bees.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Aircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.